episode number 7 already, Neil. We've done 7 weeks, almost 2 months of the Greenhorn podcast. I think a pat on the back is deserved.
And a raise your glass.
Well, yeah, cheers. We were actually talking about our beers that we bought for tonight, because we're filming on a Saturday. We don't normally drink on a weekday. The typical advertising bloke thing to do is to look at the packaging and be like, "Oh, that looks really nice. Why don't I buy that beer?" I mean, you don't look at where it's made or what it actually is. And half the time, I don't know what a DDH is, or a PPA, or an IPA, or a dark whatever, or a thingy whatever. So I was in Aldi today, and by the way, Aldi is a very good place to go and buy some beers. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've got myself this French beer, Bière Millesime, Cuvée Exceptionnelle. So any French speakers out there are probably hating on me. But I haven't tried it yet, actually. It's in a fancy bottle. It came with a cork. It was about £2.20 for 750 mils. So it's a large old boy, 5.5%. We'll try it live on the podcast right now. Oh, smooth. Nice. Tasty. And I was saying to Neil as well, I don't know if you remembered when Aldi and Brewdog had a bit of a spat, I think, on Twitter or something, or in the papers or something like that. They had it off. Anyway, Brewdog started making a beer for Aldi. Yeah. But I think they still do make it. Because they've got like a punk IPA type of beer. They've also got a grapefruit infused Elvis juice, essentially.
Yeah.
That must be, and it's brewed in Scotland. Like, who else is doing that? That must be Brewdog, surely.
I wonder if, wonder what the price difference is. I never looked at per can how much.
They're cheap. Why I think you should go to Aldi to buy your beer is it's about £1.
Wow.
And if you think, like, I do enjoy Brewdogs. I like Cloudwater. I like Meantime Brewery. I like Brew by Numbers. These kind of places, you get them in like Marks and Spencer's, you get them in Tesco's, all these kind of places. And I really enjoy them. I enjoy having one or two that are well made, that are really tasty, whatever else. But they still come in at like £3 or £4 a can. And that's that's expensive. But when I think you can buy the same thing at Aldi for £1, I think I'm going to go to Aldi.
One beer I really like is Beavertown. But again, I mean, for 4 beers, you're £9 for 4 cans. And they're the same size as Brewdog. And yeah, it tastes good. But then, as you say, there's probably cheaper alternatives.
They taste the same, really, to be honest. I don't think there's a 400% increase in taste and enjoyment on a beer if it's, effectively the same thing or almost the same thing, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I would say they're, but then again, I do like a nice wine, but some, we've had some nice wine. I think we have anyway. That, you can buy a £10 bottle, but you can also buy a £90 bottle. And, for those of you think of it 900%, is it 9 times better? Maybe. But anyway, how was your week? You said you were on the text today, you're saying you had a busy day today. So I imagine it's very much family fueled and wife and life fueled.
The week's been good, fast. I feel like I've blinked. Rebecca got her keys, Rebecca and Carol, the kind of wee vegan bakery duo, got their keys on Monday. So we have been helping them, we as an other husband, getting them ready and opening on a couple of days from now. So it's pretty mad. Things like building furniture, cleaning, putting up signs, fixing lights, all that good stuff. Coffee machines coming soon. So yeah, it's an exciting time, but also just they committed to Facebook on an opening day, and that kind of gets you going, doesn't it? It kind of adds some pressure, but yeah, hopefully we'll be ready. And
good pressure.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's a business at the end of the day, and you need to get money in the door, and the only way to do that is to open up. So
is it when you say a premises, it's not a bakery anymore? It's actually like a shop that people can go and buy things from.
Yeah. So initially, and this was maybe day 1 and 2 of thinking, is they'll just run it as a bakery, and people would come in and pick up and leave. But then they decided to open it up as a full-blown coffee shop.
Wow.
Even going down the route of getting a very fancy coffee machine, getting barista training, getting a member of staff. It's kind of all in a week. It's grown arms and legs.
Oh my word!
So it's exactly like where it is located in Dunfermline. There's no, I mean, I don't know, within a 4 or 5 mile radius, there's nowhere to get a coffee. So and the catchment area is pretty massive. It's beside a nice kids' park. It's beside a big loch where people can walk around. Got a car park. So yeah, it's an exciting venture, and we'll see where it goes. But today especially was a bit nuts because my daughter turns 7 next week, and we had our birthday party today. So that involved, getting up at the crack of dawn, and we booked out a hall. We had a bouncy castle, face painters, and all that good stuff.
So all in the same week, you had essentially opened a business, and you decided to be a hero dad and host a 7-year-old's birthday party.
Yeah.
Strong meal.
And I don't think we'd do it again. So like 2 years ago, we paid a company, went to SeaWorld and paid a fee per child, maybe 15 quid per child. They did everything from the lunch to the party games to the party bags. This time we decided to do it all. And that was fun.
So you can see why you would pay someone else to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's that kind of mentality. I think I don't know who it was I was talking about it, but you should calculate your hourly rate or the hourly rate that you want to be.
Yeah.
And then outsource if your hourly rate is essentially more than what the task of the role is. So it's like a cleaner, right? If you pay a cleaner 10, 15 quid an hour, if you earn more than £15 an hour, maybe get a cleaner.
Yeah.
So it's maybe the same thing when it comes to like party planning. Do you earn more than a party planner? Probably. So
exactly. And then straight after the party, went into the bakery and did some DIY stuff. Moved a massive fridge, took off some light fittings. It's just been mad, but I'm here.
And here you are. Neil. We're doing the podcast, and I suppose the thing with this podcast in particular, and what I've tried to help make it be, if you will. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's a low lift, right? You just plug in your microphone. We sit down, we have a chat, we have a beer, just like you would if you had a telephone call or a text or whatever else. It's not a big effort. I hope it's not.
That was good. I mean, we did have it scheduled a couple of times, and I had to cancel because bakery stuff. Gordon missed our train issues, delayed, and then
storm. You heard about the storm? What was it? Euphoria, Eutice, or whatever it was called.
Eunice or something, yeah.
Eunice. Yeah, that screwed me up for one of our recordings.
How's your week been?
This week's been a little bit more gentle than the past couple of weeks from a like filming perspective and schedule and stuff. But there's still lots of planning in the pipelines for a big course that we're filming at the end of this month, start of next month, essentially. Coming up with some new ideas for some filming approaches, so we're doing some of that this week, and then we had sort of a relatively big filming day yesterday. I had one really big day where we had 2 podcasts and a live stream, which was for something, so I had to do all that and set all that up, and it's not so much, the setup stuff's quite easy, but it's more like the data management that comes with that. So you've got 3 camera angles you're filming, you've got separate audio, you've got about a bazillion cables going on, and you have to make sure all that footage gets uploaded to the right folders, put in the right places, nothing gets missed, nothing gets corrupted. So it's a hell of a job when that happens. And I made a big filming day on Friday, which was good fun. So this week's not been too crazy. I'm trying to think of a highlight of this week overall. Nothing major springs to mind. We've got a trip in middle of March where we're going to Dubai, so that's been organised. That's for a few days. I don't know if I mentioned that. We did actually. We've got a wedding in Seattle.
Nice.
So do you remember Carlos and Amy that came to the wedding? Do you remember them?
Yeah.
So they came to the wedding. So they invited us to their wedding, which is in June, end of June, start of June, sometime in June. So we've booked our flights for that. David and Denise, my in-laws, Laura's mum and dad, we asked them if they wanted to come, help a little bit with the fact that we can go to this, because they're getting married in this like Lake Washington or something. So it's just outside Seattle. And it's part of this cool, like, complexy type of lodgy kind of place. And they're not necessarily having children at the wedding, which we were cool about. We were just going to get a babysitter for Olivia and we go to the party. But I was like, what if David and Elise fancy like a West Coast America trip? They might want to come. So they're going to do the granny and granddad, nana and grandpa duties for 2 nights whilst they're in Seattle. We'll go to the wedding, and we're going to spend a few more nights in Seattle. Then we book flights to go to LA So we're going to stay in LA, go to
sweet.
Venice Beach, stay in Santa Monica. We've booked all that now. We've just got to book one more bit of accommodation. But that's all booked. So that's super, super exciting.
Yeah, that's a good highlight.
I forgot the other highlights happened. So we had a building permit thing for the sewage pipe for the house. So the builders have been in digging more trenches, laying more pipe things, just generally just making an absolute mess. So the garden is just like World War II with the trenches surrounding it. That's all organised and prepped for concrete, I believe, to arrive on Tuesday. So that should be set up. And then that storm thing blew down fences and all whatnot. So our neighbours next door have got like part of the fence panel's gone, but we're like, well, we're building a wall there, so don't worry about it. We'll sort it out and blah, blah, blah. But the whole kitchen extension thing is very exciting because it's like properly moving forward. And now we're actually having to pay people for it, which is kind of scary. Because every so often they're like, can we have a few £1,000, please? Can we have that ready by tomorrow? Like, yeah, great.
Nice.
So, yeah, good week.
All good adult stuff. Yeah, actually, just a point you made about like filming loads of episodes in one day. I have no idea how Ali, who Gordon works for, does it. Like, has pretty intense interviews, pretty intense questions and answers and all that stuff, and does all that in one day.
But I get quite excited about these, though, if I'm honest. It almost, because I was listening to that. I sent you that Tim Ferriss, like how he did his 700 million downloads or whatever else, and he's so right in the sense that if you're not excited to do it, why are you doing it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I honestly, I genuinely get excited doing these podcasts, Neil. I like the little project that we have where we're talking about using apps like Descript for it. I think I talked to you about potentially turning these into a blog. Neil set up a website. We've got greenhornpodcast.live. And it's not expensive. Like, it doesn't cost us a lot of money.
It's a side project, isn't it?
But it's fun. Like, it's just genuinely fun. And he kind of talked about in that podcast in particular, maybe we should start doing like show notes, Neil, and adding them to the repertoire of stuff that we do. But that podcast in particular was so good that, again, it was just, if you're starting to do it off trying to make money, you're doing it wrong. And just do it for fun. Don't worry about too much. Make it as easy as possible to be able to do it, recording episodes, etc.
Yeah.
And I think that's how Ali feels about it, because this week we had James Hoffman on the podcast, who's the coffee guy on YouTube. So I was a big fanboy, just asking him all the questions and things. But he's also a really interesting person to talk to. So they both had a really engaging conversation, which was fantastic. And then another chap who I'd never actually heard of, but he was called Doctor's Kitchen, I think. Anyway, built up a big following on Instagram, has a book out there, goes on Saturday Kitchen, all that kind of stuff. He's a medical doctor, former GP. Now he's sort of a doctor chef type of person with the nutritional aspects of things. And again, just a really interesting conversation. So I suppose I get it. Like, I imagine recording 2-3 hour podcasts back to back is quite tricky. But at the same time, if you like the person you're talking to and enjoying what you're doing, then why the hell not?
True.
And they take breaks, to be fair, because it's a recorded podcast. So it's not like we don't really edit these podcasts. We just have a conversation and go for it. Whereas Ali's podcast is edited. Like, there's bits taken out, added. People go for wheeze. People go for a walk, go and have a coffee, come back. So, there is a little bit of lunch break in the middle sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, long form, you kind of got to do that.
I think so. I'm not sure how Joe Rogan does it, because he does like 5-6 hour podcasts sometimes.
Live, on camera.
Yeah, it's impressive. It's very impressive. One big thing that we had this week on the Greenhorn podcast was we hit 300 downloads. We did.
And we're almost at 350 or 340.
That's brilliant. I mean, you can see it tail off a little bit. We were down to sort of roughly 20 listens per episode. I think the first episode is probably the bulk of those 300. But, to those who are listening, I think it's brilliant. Thanks very much. I hope you're enjoying it. Hope you're following us on Instagram. I think we've had about 10 different countries around the world who have potentially tuned in, from, I think, Australia, from the UAE to Sweden to America, a few of them in there. So, it's pretty cool that we've got something going out in the world and people are listening to it, I suppose. Yeah.
Are we going to start with today's topic, or are we going to do Instagram questions first?
Oh, yeah, I did actually put them out because I was quite interested if anyone had any questions, because I do want to do like a Q&A one, but I think that we have very little fans. And we might have to encourage some friends to ask us some questions. But I did just put out there today just to see what was going on. The first question I had actually was from an old client, a friend of mine, Mikey. He asked me, thoughts on the turkey hair transplants?
Don't know what they are.
So do you know what a hair transplant is, though, Neil?
Yes.
Right, so
I
Neil's
presume
aware of
turkey
that.
has them cheap or does
Yeah,
them well.
something like that. And I think Mikey's getting on the fact that he's in his 40s now and still bodes a thick level of hair, which is impressive.
Oh, okay.
But I'm starting to struggle on the hairline aspect of things. Neil still seems to be hanging on to his, but it's getting a little thin around the edges. No, I haven't considered a hair transplant. I'm really not that bothered that I'd want to like surgically operate on my skull to be able to stop the Pope's cap that's been building for some time. But I did decide to try something called Finasteride. This is not, by the way, this is absolutely not medical advice in any sense or whatever. But I started doing something called Finasteride. You take it for about 6 months, and it's clinically proven to help improve or reduce hair loss, but at least actually grow the hair that you've potentially lost or whatever. I wasn't sure about it because I think there's some side effects where if you're trying to get pregnant, for example, it can harm your unborn child, but if you stop taking it after a week, you should be absolutely fine. But there's some bits on that. The rest of it seemed absolutely fine. I was like, yeah, screw it, why not? Just take it with my vitamins, see what happens. So I signed up to a 6-month thing with something called Newman, or whatever it is. And then they send you them and that's it. So
How's it been? It's been a couple of months now, I think.
it's actually growing back.
Wow.
which is nuts. So I took some pictures at the start, pictures after a month, and it's definitely like thicker. Like the hair under the old Pope's cap is definitely thicker. Like it's definitely
Wow.
growing. No question of it. So, I mean, again, it's one of these things where Laura doesn't want me to shave my head, and I don't necessarily want to shave my head, but at the same time, I'm actually not that bothered. If I have to shave my head, I shave my head. It's just like it's one of those things. I'm married. Like I've got to find a woman that loves me for who I am, which and I hope it isn't just for my good looks, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it would be all right. And Neil's still sporting his pretty well. I don't know when I started to lose mine. Was it late 20s?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've hit 31 and I've still
Pretty good. You got Thomas Wilson, our granddad on the other side. He was pretty thick on hair, so he must have his genes.
Yeah. And I got a question through on Instagram from somebody. Do we name drop him? Don't know, but he complimented us on.
You can use their first name, surely.
Barry. We'll call him out.
Baza. All right, Baza.
He said he complimented us. We've got a lot of good habits like fitness and I don't know, training and stuff like that, and maybe reading and stuff. But what bad habits do we have? This is quite an interesting one, or name a bad habit. It took me a wee while to think about it. I only had like 10 minutes because he just asked it. But I think one of the bad habits I've got is, I don't know, being really good throughout the week. And is it a habit? I don't know, what do you call a habit? But not binge eating, but just eating a lot at once. Like, I don't know, I don't know what you call it. Just like, oh, there's cookies over there, let's have 5 cookies type thing. And it's not really a habit. It's more of a, I don't know what it is, but I'd like to get rid of that.
Is that typically around a day when you've maybe gone out for a long run?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm running 30, 40 miles a week, so my appetite is crazy. It's also on days where it's busy, like today, for example, there's lots of cake, there's lots of sweets. So let's just go for it.
There's an easy access to something, but I'm also assuming that you hadn't really sort of, how stacked are your meals with vegetables generally?
Yeah, exactly. Like I do consume a lot of vegetables, but there's definitely, especially after long runs or during a long run, I could take more calories in.
Because you could even consider like a protein shake that's almost a recovery shake where there are some carbohydrates and stuff included, like a protein smoothie after you finished it, where there's a banana and oats and peanut butter and that kind of thing after your run. I think that might help.
Yeah. I go through stages of like 1 week or 1 month I'd be on my nutrition, and if I go for a 2-hour run I'll be taking intra carbs, whatever you call them, carbs throughout the run, and that definitely helps my appetite. But sometimes I just get out of that habit and I'll go for a 2-hour run and not take anything, which is not ideal.
Yeah, so that's a bit silly. Because it'll just hurt your performance. Like, if you want to perform at your best, and that's ultimately what you've got to try and consider, really, isn't it? And do you not take it with you because you don't have it, or is it because you've just forgotten it?
Forgotten, lazy. I want to get out the door at 6 a.m.
Right, yeah. So you should have it in front of you, because if you've forgotten about it, you can have it, like, set it up the night before. That's what you've got to do.
Yeah.
What's a bad habit that I don't necessarily want to do, or want to have? By the way, I'm not pausing to think about this as if to say that I don't have any bad habits. I definitely have some. I'm sure Laura, if she's listening to this, she's probably shouting through the wall, telling everyone how many bad habits I have. I would say, I'd probably say, like, checking my phone is pretty much as soon as I wake up. That's one of the first things that I do. And I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how I feel whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing when it's more than, like, 10 minutes. You know, it's more than, like, 5 minutes. If I'm sat there literally, like, scrolling through, like, because it's rubbish. Like, I started reading, by the way, I finished 4 books already this year. Just saying, Neil.
Wow.
Two of them are quite short and well illustrated, but anyway, I'll take them. And I'll maybe talk about them in a minute on what they are. But I feel like the time I have then is a really good time to be productive, or do something that supplies me with something. Maybe it's listening to a podcast, maybe it's reading a book, for example. And not every day is like that. Maybe I'll just listen to music, or I'll watch a YouTube video. But usually YouTube videos are things that are creative consumption, where I'm kind of learning something while I'm watching it. But when I'm sat on Instagram, like, there's almost nothing on Instagram that I consume is teaching me something or offering me anything but a shallow, subcutaneous aspect of life.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just people showing off what they're doing and very, very skin deep type of content. You know, there's nothing nurturing about it. There's nothing wholesome about it. Maybe a picture of my kid or your kids. But that's it. Like,
yeah,
when I'm reading a book, I'm getting something from it. There's kind of an author's perspective on life, or they're teaching and telling me something, or I'm listening to a podcast that's, I don't know, Jordan Peterson, or it's listening to Tim Ferriss show where there's something on that's kind of, it's appealing to me and interesting, and I can take something from it. Whereas there's not really anything I take from Instagram. And if I sit there for 10 minutes of my life in the morning just flicking through Instagram, like, oh god,
that's an hour a week. Or just over an hour a week.
It is. It's just, like, I probably spend, I think, on my screen time. Like, if I check my screen time right now, let's check your screen time, Neil. Let's see what we've got comparison wise. Screen time. So a day. So I'll do about an hour-ish a day on Instagram. Yeah, an hour and 15 minutes a day on Instagram.
What is mine?
And that's bad, isn't it? Like, an hour of my life on Instagram per day when I could be doing so. And the thing is, as well, it's not like I've sat there for an hour. It's accumulative, so you don't really notice it, do you?
Yeah, I mean, today mine's 20 minutes. Average per day is 35 minutes. So not too bad.
Compared to me, yeah. That's fair. But then I suppose you don't. I suppose I'm just trying to justify this now, but your life doesn't run on Instagram to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Neither does mine, but it kind of does. Like, it's good to know. I also quite like it. Maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe it's something I need to think about. Maybe that's a bad habit. There you go. Baza, Instagram. It's a bad habit.
So what are we talking about this week, Mr. G?
So, I don't know how much Neil has to say about this, but it's more of a question. I feel I've tried to proposition some question aspects to this, and we have notes and things sometimes where we kind of, I think of ideas on this. But we've both followed a path that would be classified as like a status quo, so the thing that society has pressured you into, or it's just you followed a path. Like, we've got married, had kids, not necessarily corporate jobs, but there's part of our life that's kind of pretty normal for most people to do. And I was talking to Angus at work this week about it, and he made some good points, actually. That's why I kind of revised parts of my argument or parts of my discussion point. But I quite like the life that is the status quo to a certain degree. Like buying a house, getting married, having kids, la-da-la, all that kind of thing. Like, I think it's a pretty good life, but then also 50% of people get divorced. So it's clearly not a good life and not a good thing. So I'm quite interested in your sort of thoughts on the pressure to conform to these types of societal norms. You know, how unconsciously do you think we are in this position? Have you felt pressure to get married and have children? Did you ever think outside of that box? So I think my first question to you actually is, when you and Rebecca were together, when you started dating, when did you bring up the idea that you wanted to have children? Or did you ever discuss that? And how did that conversation go?
I don't think we discussed it until we got married.
Not at all. Like not even like, oh, I'd like kids.
Yeah. No, there's definitely that sounding out in maybe the first year or two of relationship, because you want to be with someone if you're polar opposites and you just don't want to have kids, then you maybe want to find that out. But certainly for us, we were on a mutual terms. She wanted more kids than I wanted, but it was always around the 2 mark. And we got 3, so met in the middle a little bit. But I definitely started off young. So I married, and we went back on this. I mean, my wedding anniversary is in 3 days, which is pretty mad. Another thing to add to the list. And it's our 8-year anniversary, so that gives you an idea of how old I was. But this whole topic made me think about the kind of the why I got married and why I mean, marriage is a funny thing, because there's some couples out there that have got great families and kids and just never got married, and I really kind of dug in and thought why. And it's, for me, it was just to formulate that connection or have that ceremony, and just both.
Do you think there was, because the old in days thing of marriage was basically the consolidation of power between, you know, 2 families that owned a bunch of land. They would sell off, essentially the men in the family would sell off their daughter to the son of the other place, so they'd have a contractual agreement on stuff, right? Like that's how slightly insidious aspects of the historical nature of marriage is.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. Do you ever think that, you know, you could just be with Rebecca with having never got married?
I don't think so, and I don't know why that is. I find that kind of marriage and having your vows makes you one person, and you almost have this contract in place that you. But you
have that under, like, Scottish law, for example, cohabitation laws. Basically, demonstrate, like, honestly, they demonstrate, they protect people. So if you had for example, if you had a mortgage, you'd bought the house yourself, and you'd live together for a reasonable amount of time, and she could demonstrate that she contributes to the mortgage, then she would be entitled to a certain amount of that equity of that property.
Okay, maybe contract was the wrong word, but vows, your wedding vows, so till death do us part and that kind of thing. And
by the way, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm being like a bit of devil's advocate.
That's fine.
I'd be quite interested to hear other people's thoughts if they follow us on Instagram. But you could just be like, I promise to you that I won't ever like do or say anything to another person that would make you feel upset. Like, you could just say that to someone. You wouldn't have to pay 25 grand for a dinner and a couple of grand for your kilt and whatever else.
It feels like doing that and spending that 25 grand makes it more official and makes it more something than if you were just sitting in your living room saying, I'm not going to do anything for the rest of our lives. And it's also, yes, there's 2 sides. There's the kind of vows and the agreeing on them and going through that whole kind of emotional process together. And then there's just that big party. Like, you've got all your friends, all your family in one place celebrating the love for your wife or love for your husband. I think that's pretty powerful. And people that don't get married are probably missing out on that. They don't realise how much of I don't know, it just brings 2 families together. It's celebrating 2 families coming together.
And I think it's just a great time.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it is absolutely, it's definitely one of the most expensive things, or one of the most amount of money I've ever spent on anything. But I would do it again, because it was the best day of my life.
Yeah. They say there's only 2 times in your life that all your family and friends from both sides will come together, and it's your funeral or your wedding.
And it is cool. I'm just kind of curious about generally your thoughts around that sort of like why you felt like you needed to get married. Why couldn't you have just spent 25 grand on, I don't know, a party, like take everyone abroad, go and do that kind of thing? Like why did there have to be a marriage or vows and this kind of thing? And this because that feels a bit like there's an element of social pressure to a certain degree, where this is the thing that people do. This is how they declare love to each other. Whereas you could in theory just do that, couldn't you? There's no need to stand up in front of anyone and do those kind of things. And the contractual aspect of things, I think I do understand, where there's part of it that means if I die, Laura gets everything. There's no if, buts, maybes, questions. Wills need to be written up. But equally, you could just go to a lawyer and just say, hey, can you write this contract up that Laura gets everything? You don't have to, again, spend 25 grand, for example, on your wedding to
There's
do
also another kind of glass to look through, is the religious part. So my wife's Christian. She kind of devoted herself to Christianity all her life. She still goes to church to this day. So there's that aspect that I had to respect if I wanted to be her husband. And I'm not saying that I was pressured into it because she's not going to stay with me unless we get married. That was never kind of the question. And yeah, I mean, I made the first question. It was a total surprise to her that I went down on one knee. There was no kind of previous conversation of like, when are we getting married or when's the wedding day? And I even remember speaking to my father-in-law, asking him for permission.
Oh, that story, Neil. By the way, that story, I'm not sure if you want to tell it, but do you want to tell it to the listeners? Because I thought it was hilarious. Go on, please.
I'll go for it. So we just went out for coffee, and side story, me and my father-in-law used to run a business together, a bit of a startup, and go into another episode. We were meeting about that, and in the back of my head I was going to ask him the question at the end, and then it got to the end. We went outside, went to the bus stop.
So you're obviously, because I've done this as well, right? I've had to ask, again, a traditional thing that is this like an unsaid written rule in society that you must do it? But I did the same thing. I asked the father-in-law to hand in marriage. But you've missed out quite a lot here. How nervous you were. Yeah,
no, I was obviously really, really nervous.
And so you were like, I'm going to do it. Didn't do it. You've now left the flat. You've now walked down the road.
Left the coffee shop. Walked down the road to the bus stop. And I knew my father-in-law was going to get on his bus, and his bus arrived. I've got to do it now. So I asked him the question. I was like, "Do you mind if I marry your daughter?" And he said, "Of course." Like no kind of hesitations or anything, and got on the bus.
And did you did the bus slowly drive away, and he was just waving at you, and you were waving at him?
I can't remember that much, but I do remember standing there thinking, "I've got permission. Let's go."
Brilliant. Right, time to book. Get the wedding ring. So yeah, that type of thing, marriage and whatnot. It's kind of interesting, and I do wonder how it might sort of pan out in the future. Are these types of traditions going to continue? Are these types of societal pressures going to continue to sort of be a bedrock in what it is? Because there are tax benefits to being married, for example. There are sort of underlying. There are there's legal benefits to it as well for other genders than us. I don't know if I can include that in the podcast, but there are. So it's things like that. I'm curious to see if marriage does continue because 50% rates of divorce. 1 in 2 marriages do divorce. So
if you look at social media, I think social media has probably had a massive impact, especially like Instagram, where you've got the single people out there living their best life apparently, and the average age of having kids is definitely going up, and the average age of weddings or marriage is probably definitely going up. And I think social media is impacting that because people don't necessarily settle down. They can get a quick fix if they want. Is Tinder maybe part of that social media aspect? Is that impacting people getting married?
I think it's also that there's also a thing here that when even in our lifetimes, and certainly during our parents' lifetimes, women were still that type of in that position where they didn't necessarily go to work, where they largely still stayed at home They didn't necessarily, they looked after children, they did all whatnot. And I'm not saying that's right, and I'm not saying it's wrong, or whatever's the choice of the individual, I think is important in that vein. But largely, society was a patriarchy, if you want to call it that. It was women stay at home and do the dishes and look after the kids. But now, because our society is much more fair and much more equal than it's ever been, women go to work and they have careers and they have aspirations that are outside of just having children, meeting a man and getting married. Like that's not the top of their list anymore. It's also not necessarily in the top of lists of males, probably for most of their lives anyway, because we also don't have a biological clock. We can have children when we're 90 if we want to. So I do think the age of having children and marriage has probably got longer because of women going to work and having a career and other aspirations than that.
Yeah.
But also the fact that there is more to life now than there ever has been, where air travel is much easier, so you can go and do things. Education is such a large part of society now, where getting a university degree, getting on the corporate ladder, male or female, is important to people. So I guess people just get along the lines of the fact that they're just getting older because of work, because of careers, because of other aspirations. Children are amazing, and getting married, I can say, is absolutely incredible. But at the same time, having children stops you being able to travel. It stops you being able to sort of, certainly from Laura's perspective, she has to halt her career to a certain degree because we have children. Rebecca had to as well.
Yeah.
So I can see why people would rather spend their 20s, in Vegas at a pool party, popping off champagne, than they would be knee-deep in nappies and baby bath time.
It's interesting because obviously I was knee-deep in nappies multiple times throughout my 20s. And it comes back to the whole social media thing. And are these 18, 19, 20-year-olds seeing the lifestyle these Bitcoin investors or something can live out in Vegas? Maybe they are. But I've got a question for you. Do you think your marriage is more successful if you go through a dating app like Tinder, or I can't even name any more because I've never been on them? But we discussed this at work because we're watching the Tinder Swindler and other stuff. And is a conventional way of meeting, like I met Rebecca at a party, is that a better way to meet somebody than the Tinder, or does Tinder match you better? Do you think you've got a more chance or less chance of divorce?
If I think about things objectively, I can't tell you whether or not meeting someone on a social media app is better than meeting someone in the traditional sense. I don't know the data. I can't tell you what that is. Subjectively, I could probably give you like a n equals 1 experiment, which again isn't really very valid, so it is very opinion based. So take it for what it is. But I would say your pool of people that you're likely to interact with, and your ability to kind of send out a PAR-Q form. So it's a bit like a prerequisite type of idea, where when you're on Tinder or you're on any of these kind of apps, you can essentially, because at the end of the day, I don't care what people say, there is still that nature of, are they hot or are they not? Like, are you physically attracted to them?
Yes.
You could probably fall in love at some point in your life with someone who's not necessarily as attracted, you weren't attracted to them initially. But I can tell you now, I thought Laura was hot, so I was like, yeah, swipe right. Done. So that's your first bit out of the way, right? So you've already managed, if you're in a club or in a bar or a party or whatever else, you've maybe got, there's 10 girls there, let's say. And none of them, you might not be attracted to any of them, but you also might be attracted to 6 of them.
Yeah.
Now, I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't be appropriate to go and speak to all 6 of them and chat them up, would it?
Yeah.
However, I would say that it would be appropriate in the sense that you're trying to get to know them. So you've had that subjective nature of going, oh, you're hot, I want to speak to you. So you chat to them, you flirt with them, you do those kind of things. But you couldn't do that in a normal setting, could you? You couldn't flirt with one girl and then, go, oh, sorry, my 10-minute slot is up with you. I need to go to the next girl at the party and have a chat with her and flirt with her. How do you feel about that? Does that feel okay? So things like that, I imagine, are probably better for people when you have something like Tinder or Bumble or Hinge, where you're probably able to talk to numerous amounts of people that you find attractive. And you then get the kind of, it's texting, you're kind of like messaging backwards and forwards. And then you kind of get a reasonable sense of banter. And Laura's banter was great. I thought she was really funny. I thought she was really interesting. And if you're like that over a message, then you're like, oh, I want to meet this person.
Yeah.
So you've already like basically kind of taken a bunch, like, I don't know, 100,000 people that are, say, on Tinder, or let's say 1,000 people that are within your area and your settings that you have. You then whittle them down into people that have accepted you for being hot, and they're hot, which is quite important. So you've already had this reciprocal thing. You then have a conversation with them, a very short one perhaps, or over a few days or a week or whatever else. So you don't actually have to go out anywhere. You don't have to go to a bar. You don't have to spend any money. You don't have to waste time. You don't have to waste energy. So I actually think, based on that, and I've just kind of come to a conclusion in my brain, that meeting people on dating apps, because of that pooling, the amount of people that you have access to, the fact that it initially covers the attraction thing, which is super important, the fact that you can talk to all of those attractive people that think you're attractive, then you can whittle that down to what their personality's like, because that's the thing that you're going to fall in love with, let's be honest. And then you can choose to invest your time in that person that you found interesting and attractive, to then try to turn it into something that's, I don't know, a partnership, like a quote-unquote soulmateship. So, yeah, I'm going to say it's better than meeting someone in a traditional sense at a party or at a club, I think.
Yeah, but it was an interesting analysis of how you did it. But if you think about it, in your 20s or late teens, you'd have went through different girls, maybe wasted more time because you might have thought you're attracted to one, didn't like the personality, but that took a few weeks or months to figure out, or years. And that's your kind of way of, I guess, filtering them out. Oh, what am I trying to say here? Don't know.
Can you say filtering out, Neil? What a callous dater you are. I'm just going to filter them out.
That's essentially what you do on Tinder, though.
Well, yeah, and you do. No, it's just the way you said it, Neil. I think it's the way I'm getting it. But the thing with the whole social media apps or dating app aspect of that is, it's just, the idea of a soulmate. I think I wrote something about this in our notes. The whole soulmate thing. Like, I'm not sure soulmates necessarily exist. Like, there's 7 billion people on the planet, but there's certainly very few people that you would fall truly, madly, and deeply in love with that you would follow that societal norm of getting married to. And I think Tinder or those types of apps give you a much greater opportunity of meeting that person. It's just like if you'd stayed in Inverurie, Neil, and never gone to Aberdeen, you'd have only had, a pool of maybe 25 chuchters.
Yeah, spangles.
But that would have been it, right? That would have been your ability to fall in love. And I do think that the larger pool of people that you have access to or are able to have a conversation with, you're much like, it's the same kind of thing of at work. You probably talk to a lot of people at work, or you have in sort of other jobs, and that's enabled you to climb ladders, to do certain things, to meet new people. Same thing of me coming to London, like the amount of clients that I trained that were from different professions who introduced me to other people, who introduced me to other people. It's that type of thing. And if you just stay in the same place, and especially if you don't live in London, especially if you don't live in Aberdeen, if you lived in Inverurie, which is full of 20,000 people or whatever else, you're only really going to meet a very few amount of people that you could fall in love with. And I'm not sure you'd fall in love with them. I think you're comfortable.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. The people that definitely, and I'll encourage this to my kids, is go out and see the world, go out and try and live somewhere different. Because if you stay around the small pool of people, there's a Dunfermline or Inverurie or a little town, then, the chances of you finding your soulmate or finding the person you're madly in love with is probably pretty slim.
I almost think this podcast has gone like totally different directions in terms of what I thought it would from that status quo thing. But it's a good I like this conversation. I want to keep going with it. Yeah. And I mentioned that sort of settling and commitment thing. I don't know. Have you ever had any of your friends sort of come to you and go, "Oh, I don't want to settle"? Like they've met a girl, or they're doing like a job or whatever. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to just settle. I want to find the one. I want to find the one that I'm gonna, spend the rest of my life with." Have you ever had any of those conversations about like settling?
No, I mean, I've certainly got a friend, and I'm not going to name drop him because people will be listening that know him. But he's been through a few relationships, and he's had a good time, but for whatever reason they haven't worked out. But I just can't see him settling. We've never had the conversation. He's probably going to realise it's him as soon as he listens to it. But he's definitely not one that's going to settle. And he's more career driven. He is going up the ladder pretty
But
quickly.
are you using the word settle? Because I feel like if you use the word settle is different to commitment.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're going to be like, oh, I don't know if I'll ever settle down, but that seems like such a negative or kind of mute way of looking at the idea of commitment. Because if I just said I'm just going to settle for Laura, like that's not very sexy, is it? It's not very romantic.
No.
But
no.
But I wholeheartedly, and I know you are as well, Rebecca, is you're committed.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's very different. That's very different to settling. That's just like, it's not second best. It's nothing. I am all in.
Yeah, you're right.
You're right. If Laura phone, I'm in the most important meeting of my life, and Laura phones me and says, "I need you right now. I need you to leave." She doesn't have to give me a reason. I'll leave.
Yeah.
But that's commitment. That's not settling. That's commitment. So, do you think, it's because he views it that way, as settling rather than committing?
Maybe. And I also think he enjoys the single life and the not having a kid running around to look at or entertain or look after. I think he just wants to be his own person.
Because that's hard. I don't think any of us have that vision to begin with, though, do we?
No.
Like if you hadn't met Rebecca and you're just living your Nelson Greenhorn single life, you don't, because you haven't met that person. You haven't met that person where you've gone, I'm committed to this.
True.
Because if you do actually break it down, like, children are really difficult and they cost you a lot of money, but they bring you so much joy. But they also give you so much joy because you made it with someone else that you committed to.
Yeah.
That's a cool feeling. And, again, stretching this a little bit further as well, based on the talk about Tinder that I was talking about, that idea that you pull a lot of people, I think that in turn, and social media in itself as well, almost offers you too much choice. And there's too much choice to the point where you get saturated to the point, I don't know, like, how do I commit? Because if there's so much choice, then, I think there's studies on this type of thing where if you give someone 100 choices versus 10 choices, they almost don't make a choice. They don't choose the right thing or the wrong thing because there's too many things to choose, and they're too worried about the fact that if they pick this one, then they're going to miss out on that one. And that's that settling dilemma, isn't it? So it's that reframing. Yeah, maybe this bloke is things like that.
Yeah, maybe. If they do say they're going to commit, and they've committed to this woman in 6 months' time, they know what Tinder's like. They know what's out there. They know they can easily, quickly get somebody else. And I mean, I've never had that experience, so that's not kind of in me. And I'm not saying it's in everybody that's used these apps, but it's certainly, it could play a part in that. In terms of divorce,
I think it probably does. And that's where maybe the
finding somebody new.
And then I think, and I don't know whether this is true or not, and whatever else, but as people get nearer into the 30s, men can just do what they want when they want. And that's like, there's a long story into this about the idea of like suicide and why men have existential crises, and the fact that they have no set path. Like, there's nothing that says, if you don't know what to do, this is what you can do. Like, you literally have the abundance of choice. And part of that is also being able to have children whenever you want. But I'm also curious about sort of the female perspective of that, where it's the same kind of thing, right? Settling and commitment aspect. If there's lots of choice out there, maybe I'll find a better guy. Or whatever. By the way, I'm talking more from a heterosexual perspective, but I'm not I don't want to feel like anyone's excluded. But fundamentally, maybe I'll meet a better person. And I think men and women experience that. However, men and women experience it differently, in the sense that women, if they do want to have children, and they are set to have children, they have a biological clock. And there are incidences like the much higher risk at 40 of having birth defects, for example. Down syndrome, I know, is a much higher risk at 40.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if, when you talked about the idea that people are getting older when they have children, they have older when they get married, are people rushing much more? Are they being like, holy shit, I want to have children, I want to have that family, I want to follow that status quo, the social norm sort of aspect things that I've talked about at the start? And are people rushing to get into that? And then ultimately it kind of turns into something that, A, they're not in a happy relationship, their partners, they're not necessarily committed to the partner, or the partner's not committed to them. They have children, and the only reason why they're together is anyway. That's really depressing.
Yeah, it
but
was quite.
You know what
deep.
I mean?
Certainly do, and I think if you're a middle age, what's middle age? 30s, 40s.
40, I hope.
But yeah, if you're halfway through your 30s, coming on to your 40s, and you're a woman, I think there is probably and you want kids, there is probably definitely a time pressure that may result in your marriage not being that successful in 10 years' time.
I do wonder. It was kind of a thing I was talking to Ali a couple of weeks ago. Is this idea of you don't want it cancelled on the internet. So, by the way, if anyone's listening to this and they disagree with me, I'd like to have a conversation with it because maybe I'm wrong. But I do wonder if we sort of start to shift away from these types of societal norms where it's like, is marriage actually worth it? Do I have to have children at this time? Because medical advances mean that women can sort of freeze their eggs. You can wait until later in life if you want to have children, that kind of thing. And we're also probably, well, we're not really a healthier society because we're getting fatter and fatter. But if we're able to look after our bodies, and even if we have children when we're 50, but we still look after and maintain ourselves, we can be 80 and have a 30-year-old kid, or a 30-year-old adult kid.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I do wonder if these types of things will shift with the advances in science, and women being able to potentially have children without necessarily men required. You can go to a sperm bank and get yourself, Chad from America, who's an NFL football player, blonde hair, blue-eyed, and have a child, right? You can do that, and you can just basically do it whenever you want as well. So I'd be curious how that kind of maybe that path moves forward.
That changes the whole shift of, and using a real life example, when Isla is 18, I will be, quick maths, 43-ish, 44. And I think that's a great age. I think having kids young, for me personally, I can be under 50 and all my kids are 18, going to university, going to college, moving out, whatever they want to do. I'm still relatively young. If you're now talking about having kids when you're 40, 45, then you might not see their kind of early 20s and that kind of thing. And I think that
you might not. I think if you're responsible, you're more likely to, because
the quality of life you're going to have, though,
it's going to be different. Like, of course, it's going to be different. But equally, their 20s and 30s would have been very different to yours.
Yeah.
As you get through your 20s, you start to earn more money. You can go and do more things. You have much more health. Even when you're 45 and 50, you're not the same as when you were 21.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's kind of just it's just a different way to look at it. And I'd also perhaps consider the idea that the older you are, by the way, again, I'm playing devil's advocate, I don't necessarily disagree with you or agree with you, is the fact that if you're 45, you might be more conservative in your viewpoints. So that might mean you wouldn't necessarily go to Burma, for example, for a week-long trip hiking through. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not going to sleep a bunk bed in a hostel that costs £5.
Yeah,
you're much more likely to do that when you're 20.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the conservative viewpoints you'll have when you're 45 won't just be around the fact that, I don't know, you don't want to, you'd rather stay in a hotel. It's also things like, the bad things that happen in the world. Certainly when you're 45. Like, you could get hit by a train, a plane. Like, there's dangerous things in Sri Lanka. There's dangerous things in Thailand. There's dangerous things going on in the world. Whereas when you're like 19, 20, you don't even think about that. Like, you'll go and jump out of a plane if you want to, and not even without insurance, and not really worry, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Come up to kind of a few pluses of marriage and kids for me. That kind of the sense of relief when you both agree to marriage and you kind of get that ring on the finger.
A sense of relief, as in to say, oh, I thought I was going to be alone for the rest of my life because I'm such a weirdo. I can't believe she's agreed to this.
You don't have to open that up anymore, Gordon.
I need to get a contract. I need to get a contract. She's locked in. She's not going to leave me. That's it. We're in.
Yeah. Imagine.
But no, I do. I agree with you.
You agree.
I think when I talk to Laura about this because she'll talk about like her single friends or we'll know some single people or whatever else.
Yeah.
And you hear the drama and you're just like, I couldn't be bothered with that anymore. Does she like me? Does she not like me? Oh, what should I do? Who's paying for dinner tonight? I've paid 4 times. You'd pay once.
And then you've got the kind of the coming home aspect of you've been at work all day, or you've been away travelling for work or whatever, you've been away for a week, and you come in that door and you've got people waiting for you. You've got that warm welcome of kids running to you, or your wife, meal on the table, or that kind of thing. And I think that's priceless. Like I couldn't imagine, and it's easy for me to say because I've got 3 kids in it, but I couldn't imagine life without that. I think it's just the best feeling ever.
It's like and I hope Laura feels like I support her in her endeavours. But I have to say that I feel that because I feel a huge pressure as the sole provider, the sole income provider in this family. So it's a monetary aspect. But I need to go out and I need to focus and I need to work and I need to do the things. You know what I mean? And to like, exactly like you say, coming home and she's bathed Olivia, she's put dinner on. Like it's one of the best feelings I've ever had. Like, it's amazing that she does that for me, and that commitment that she has and what she does for me is just like it makes me it makes me tear up a little bit inside because it's just so good. Like it means like I can be the best version of myself to provide for us because I know I have that, and I'll never take that for granted. I promise that I'll never take that for granted because it helps me. Yeah, it helps me. You clearly as well. Not have to think about all the other stuff. You can just do your work. Do the work. Is essentially what you have to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I don't know if this is another kind of side effect of having a family and having kids, is when you go to sleep at night, like you're about to close your eyes and just thinking that you provided this house, or you jointly provided this house, depending on how it's worked out, but you've got a safe house under your kids, under your family, and just everyone's healthy. It's a pretty special feeling.
It is, yeah, it is, and I couldn't imagine not having it.
Yeah.
And if maybe there was a societal norm or following the status quo or whatever, like what do you want to call it? I think I would have been. I couldn't imagine it any better not having that, like not following that trend. I think.
Yeah,
like,
and
if and this is personal to us. This is personal to you. It's personal to me. Like how I feel about it, how you feel about it, how the next person feels about it. But I suppose to a certain degree, there's an element of consciousness that we have of that, because not everyone thinks about that. They get pressured into being married. They feel like the parents will disown them if they don't get married, if they don't find someone, if they don't have children. So we're kind of conscious of the decisions we've made, though, aren't we?
Yeah, no, for sure. But even trying to put yourself in someone's shoes that hasn't got married, hasn't had kids, what would I be doing? Probably still in Inverurie, Aberdeen.
You'd have more money.
I'd probably have more money, but I'd be in Aberdeen. I don't think I would have moved down here, because I moved down here to provide for my family that I had. I would have probably just moved back in with the parents and been in Bograxy and.
But you wouldn't. Yeah. But you wouldn't have. Like, what would you have been? What would you have been doing? Like, if we go over the hour, we go over the hour. But what would you have been doing if you hadn't got married? Did you ever think about that?
No, I think I'm not one to think that your book's already been written. There's some people out there that you're just living the script and your life has been set out already by somebody up there. I don't believe in that, but I definitely believe I would have met somebody else. That's quite hard to say, like, because I don't want to meet anyone else, obviously. But if Rebecca hadn't come along and I wasn't at that party together, then I don't know.
Do you think you'd always have followed this path? You would have got to this point essentially some way or another.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted kids.
Okay.
From as early as I can remember, I've always wanted a family. So. It might not have been as successful as this one, but
why did you always want a family?
Just that feeling of having and not being alone and having people around me, especially. And I don't know when I started thinking this, but when you get older, it's just a great feeling to have, or hope to have, and you've got grandkids running around, and your older kids are grown up and moved out, and they're now living and fending for themselves. I feel I was probably quite young, maybe late teens, early 20s, to think about that. But yeah, it's always been in the back of my head.
Would you have had kids later?
No.
Well, you seriously would have had children, like no matter, like you wouldn't have even done maybe a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, 4 years.
No, I love being the youngest dad. Like, that sounds weird, but just like, I'm around a lot of dads now, obviously, and I'm probably, I don't think I've met a younger dad yet around me, but just, I don't know, having that energy and enthusiasm and so
are you saying that all the other dads that are around you are just pulling all parts?
Sometimes. But even an example at Isla's party today, I felt like I was young enough and cool enough to bounce in the bouncy castle together with all their friends and chase them around and just be a big kid.
Do you not think you would just be like, because I'm a very different age to you. I think you had your kid when you were 25.
Yeah, Isla's 7. I'm 31.
So I was 34 when I had first child. So I was 9 years older than you were.
I was 23. Yeah.
You were 23 when you had a kid.
Yeah. So Isla's 7 today or next week. I'm 31 now.
Oh yeah! Wow, crikey! So I was definitely I was 10 years older than you essentially before having a child, and I'm not sure if it's age, Neil. I think it's just you, like, because I would still jump around. I'd go in the bouncy castle.
No, but add 7 years onto you. How old are you going to be?
42.
Would you jump on that bouncy castle at 42?
100%.
Okay.
Like, I'm going to be an embarrassing dad that goes ice skating. I'm going to be the embarrassing dad that gets dressed up at birthday parties. I think there's like again, it's that type of, because I've had friends of mine who are younger than me. They're younger than you, in fact. They're 30, and they would say, you don't really act like my sister, for example. They would say, because you're the same age as my sister. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, is that like, I don't think it's necessarily something negative they're saying to me, but it's equally, I'm a bit like, well, are you supposed to act a certain way when you're like 35? Are you supposed to act a certain way when you've had kids? Are you supposed to act a certain way when you've got back? Like, what a sad expectation of life if you think that when you're 40 you can't go in a bouncy castle, for Christ's sake.
No, I do agree, but I guess I'm taking surveying everybody around me, everybody I see out in the streets that are older dads than me, and maybe coming to that conclusion.
Yeah, maybe you are, and I don't think it's unfair. Like, I think that there's definitely an aspect of self-awareness that increases as you get older. Because, like I said before, are you likely to go travelling to Burma when you could get killed for whatever reason? Whereas when you're 19 or 20, you don't really think about that. But equally, I think you're more conscious of yourself and what you're doing the older that you get. Because, again, you understand the ramifications of doing something wrong because you've done it wrong a few times or enough times that you don't want that to happen again.
Yeah.
But equally, I'm kind of in that mindset where I'm like, nah, screw it. Like, if I want to go to bloody bouncy castle, I'll go to a bouncy castle when I'm bloody 50 if I have to.
This is kind of going round down a rabbit hole, but I wonder if that's a subject or a symptom of us being into personal development, reading these books, listening to these podcasts, and just living our life a bit more than the norm and the people we see around us that are a bit stuck in a rut. They're maybe in a dead-end job.
I think it's an awareness that I couldn't give a shit what someone thinks of me.
Yeah.
Like, there are probably, I could probably count on my hands, both hands, the amount of people that I care, that I would listen to if they had something to say about my attitude to something or my behaviour towards something. Because most of the things that I do aren't illegal. They aren't that they aren't that offensive. Like, I could apologise for them later, right? I tend to live my life like that, where if I can apologise for it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So with that, if you're at a party with, I don't know, 10 other dads, and I might know a couple of them that are probably my friends, or that I'd put them in like a friend bracket. Even then, I might not even put them in a friend bracket. Let's say they're my friends. That's two people that, like, I'm conscious of the fact that my behaviour impacts them who they are. Like the rest, anyone else, I don't care. And I think you take that attitude as well. I don't know where we get that from. So whether we're into personal development, all that kind of stuff, I think it's just also a fact that we're just self-aware to the point where if someone thinks I'm doing something they don't agree with, or they think it's embarrassing, or they think it's wrong, I don't care.
Yeah, maybe that's just it. Maybe there's too many dads that give a shit.
Yeah, or are too self-conscious, or don't have enough self-esteem, or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, we're going far too off this. I think we hit an hour and 5 minutes. So this will be the longest podcast we've ever done. But I thought that was a good topic. Like I like that, and it wasn't quite the direction I thought it would go in. But I thought it was brilliant. Again, these always give me some amazing. They give me some really good insights to you, Neil. And I hope that sometimes when I talk about things and maybe push back on things, it makes you think about them more, and we have sort of better, deeper understanding of each other and all that kind of stuff. So, again, really enjoyed this one.
Yeah,
I hope the listeners enjoyed it. We've got episode number 8. We're approaching that 10th episode, which I'm quite excited for. I think we need to interview our dad for the 10th episode. What do you think? Have you asked him about it yet?
I haven't. No.
Right, we need to proposition it, because we've actually put a list together of like guests, haven't we? I started that list thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe we should get the wives on or something. I don't know.
I'll commit to by this time next week. I'll ask Dad.
Right, and we'll see what he says.
Yeah, and then plan B is the wives.
We won't tell them though, yeah?
Yeah. Date night.
Date night. By the way, we're doing a podcast.
There's a microphone on the table.
Right, Neil, it's been a pleasure as always. I hope you enjoy your Saturday. I hope tomorrow is a little bit less frantic and a bit crazy and you get a bit of time off. But
I'm sure it won't
either
be.
Either way, thanks to anyone who's listening. I appreciate the fact that you've tuned in for over an hour now. Give us a thumbs up wherever there are thumbs up. And Neil, thanks very much. Enjoyed it.
Cheers.